Thank you, because it is a little bit less, so thank you.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Leominster School Committee on Tuesday, June 7th. If everyone can please rise to salute the flag.
Which way? Because it's
Where is it? Outside in the parking lot?
It's outside in the parking lot.
Okay, somewhere that way?
Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this point, we'd like to open up the public forum. We have three people thus far who have signed up. Could Carrie Noseworthy please come up? Please say your name and your address and limit your comments to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Carrie Noseworthy, and I reside at 95 Smith Street in Leominster. I've got 2 children in the public schools. I have a 7th grader and a 5th grader. And I have brief comments tonight. I just, first of all, wanted to thank everybody on the committee for all that you do. I know it's been tough, and appreciate you stepping up to the plate, because public service isn't easy, so thank you for that. I wanted to speak in support of the, and thank you for the handout, summary of Priority Plus budget that includes school committee requests that is totaling a 4.04% above net school spending budget. As a taxpayer, if I could, I would pay more so that we could fund all of the positions, but thoroughly appreciate that the school committee has put forth options in addition to the net school spending, because I think that that's what our schools need and what our community needs. And again, I really appreciate that. I know the school committee doesn't decide this, but it was actually my 13-year-old that mentioned that he thought that there was a guidance counselor position that might be gotten rid of at the high school. And if that is true, even though I don't have a child going into the high school, I would just like to say that I think a guidance counselor in a high school is one of the most important positions that exists, that helps those kids figure out whether they're going to go to work after high school or, you know, college, university, whatever. I think that we owe it to our kids to have somebody there to help them make those correct decisions along the way. So I would just ask if anybody's listening that if there is a guidance counselor position that's up basically on the chopping block at the high school, that I just wanted to say that I thought that that was a very important position. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you again for putting forth a budget beyond net school spending. And although the mayor isn't here tonight, I would also like to ask if that is the budget that's passed, I would really love to see him approve that budget and let the city council sort of sit down and decide and look at the numbers and figure out what's best, and respect the vote tonight, whatever it is that the school committee presents. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael?
Michael Stassen, 893 Main Street. I just want to quickly say that while the proposed budget that we've talked about, that we have the summary of here, I think is still not enough, but it's definitely the best of the options that was discussed, so I'm hoping you'll vote for it tonight.
Thank you. Peter?
Peter Haggis, 333 Elm Street. I have a few things to say. One of them, I can't really express more than what the representative from the custodians had already said before, in terms of the custodians being outsourced potentially. My first thought was the safety concerns, and I think the Clinton example she gave is more than I could say. Another one, though, is the IT department. As someone that has a software development and game development background, I can speak to it a little more directly. And I worked as someone in an educational game company, and I've delved into the research in terms of technology and software integration to augment the classrooms. And I can only say that the IT needs are only going to grow over the next few years, and the demand for the IT department is going to grow with that. And in all of my experience through either indirectly or directly with different organizations, an in-house IT department is almost always preferable to an outsourced one. Outsourced ones are only usually used for temporary or for sporadic needs. And in fact, an example of the inefficiencies with outsourced IT departments is the city right now has just hired a part-time contractor to work as a liaison between its vendor and the city department heads. And I know that because I applied for the position. And in fact, in one of the interviews, they asked if it became a full-time position in a couple of years, if I'd still be interested, because they're anticipating in that kind of transitioning into a larger aspect. So they're like, my interpretation, without putting words in the mouth, really was that they're going to wean off of the outsourcing and try and bring more of it into the city. So if that goes, I can only see us in a few years trying to bring back some of those back into the school department, which the school department's IT needs, as far as I can see from an outside perspective, is larger than a lot of the other departments. And finally, I just want to address that the issues that are happening right now are mostly, it's a compounding of deficits that happen year after year after year. And that's because every year the city funds close to net school spending, and the schools need more than that. I think everyone agrees the Chapter 70 formula is outdated, and it doesn't represent what the school systems actually need, yet that's what the budgets are based off of. And I don't see any other department, and they're not as transparent or accessible, so I can't say for certain, but I don't believe any of the other departments have an arbitrary number that's significantly lower than what level funding is as a baseline. And I don't think it's right to hold the school to something that is basically unrealistic by all accounts. And so, I mean, I appreciate the predicament that the school committee is in, and you need to be fiscally responsible and also service the needs of the students in the school district. But I would actually ask that we get closer to a level funding if possible, because when it leaves here, it's going to go to the mayor's office. And historically speaking, you're not going to see a whole lot added back in. So, and then from there, it will go to city council, which unfortunately has not had the opportunity to reduce it, which is all they can do. So if you ask for a little more, and being responsible, I think we should always strive for efficiency. So any savings that can be made, I know there's some in transportation, I'm all for it, but ask for what the school system actually needs and allow the city to go through the process of cutting based off of what its projections are. Don't do it for them, because you're probably not going to see any of it added back in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address us in public forum? Please step forward.
Gary Zimmerman, Lynn Haven Road. As a taxpayer, and sorry I'm going to be a little redundant from my other talks probably, I get back to my original thought of the unions in our government not being accountable for their decisions sometimes. So I just want to summarize a few things. $2.4 million towards health care for people that retire early. This $2.4 million for early retirement health care is now affecting people's jobs, affecting the kids, and affecting the taxpayers. I just heard the high school paid out around $700,000 in substitute teaching last year, or this year. I don't know if that's true, but why? For LCE, I read about last night's meeting, and all I can say is show the numbers. If this school would be cost more if it wasn't there, then show the numbers. So there's a justification for it. But on the other hand, why not show alternative solutions using an infrastructure that's already in place? Busing. Having more than half the busing cost, over $2 million, for less than 5% of the student population is mind-boggling to me. Again, the people setting the rules have no accountability of cost onto the taxpayers and the burden onto the local cities and towns. I came up with a new acronym, OSS, Overall Net School Spending. I know we all talk about the net school spending number and what's there, but I look at it as from a taxpayer, there's an overall school spending, all the capital improvements put in the school. So you could actually get rid of the capital improvements and say, here's more net school spending, and let our schools get into rough shape. So to me, there is still a lot of money spent in the schools, and to compare the net school spending to the other schools, you'd have to know all the numbers. Are all the other districts spending $70 million or $40 million? Because to spend 2% over net school spending at $40 million is a lot different. So that's my new acronym. It's all semantics and how you want to look at it, but the bottom line is millions of dollars is spent overall baseline of the schools. Roughly 2/3 of the whole city's budget is spent on the schools. Again, reform is needed. I do want to bring up the IT department. I used to be in IT, and I was going to bring up the same thing that the previous person brought up, Peter, I think his name was. Why not offer them, if they're going to lose their job, let them form a business, a company, hire them back as consultants, and the position in the city hall, share the resources. That seems like a better way to go and give some people their jobs. One last thing. I remember a few years ago, LHS was a level 1 school for 2 years. I don't think we were spending over net school spending to get to that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address?
Good evening. Tom Kanakia, 315 Joslin Street, Leominster, which incidentally is the mayor's old house. So I apologize for those of you that were here last night and heard me speak, but I'm going to, my wife says that I'm very imaginative, so I'm going to imagine that there was a cardboard cutout of the mayor right there as I read this. Good evening. I would like to pose a scenario to the mayor with a few questions regarding the city's FY16 budgeting process. What if the City Council received your budget earlier instead of a few days prior to the deadline so they could thoroughly review and discuss it? What if the city budget included a capital project plan with expenses instead of just a list of capital projects? What if the city used accurate estimated tax receipts in the formulation of the city budget, thereby not requiring a property tax increase? What if Leominster was not ranked by the Department of Revenue as having the 30th highest property tax rate out of the 241 cities and towns that have a single tax rate, or out of all 353 cities and towns, we are ranked the 37th highest? What if the spent-to-date reports on closeout day of the fiscal year did not show excessive amounts of taxpayer money left over in department budgets, totaling $6.9 million for FY16 alone and $19.4 million from FY14 to the present? What if the taxpayer money remaining in department budgets going into free cash for fiscal year 16 was not 14.7% of the total property tax levy collected, but more in line with the state average of 5.5%? What if the taxpayer money in free cash was not allocated to the stabilization account, our rainy day fund, which as of today stands at $14 million? What if our current stabilization fund amount of $14 million was not the 13th highest total in the state out of the 321 cities and towns reporting? What if the amount of money with which you exceeded net school spending for fiscal year 16 was not 0.1%, or just $59,569? What if the funding effort for this year was not 97.1%, when you take into consideration that the original budget approved by the City Council was $400,000 under net school spending, and you, Mr. Mayor, recommended transportation funding with a $1.6 million shortfall? It is the substantial underfunding of the school department that has created the current situation. What if Leominster schools were not ranked by DESE's Office of School Finance as the 9th lowest funded district in the state out of the 261 non-regional vocational school districts for fiscal year 16? What if chargebacks, the cost the school department has to pay back to the city for overhead expenses, $6.4 million for fiscal year 16 alone, were not added to the school department budget and used to reach net school spending requirements? What if the chargeback amount for school employee benefits did not increase from $1.8 million in FY11 to $2.6 million in FY16, a 45% increase at a rate of 9% per year? What if the city did provide a justification for this increase, which it has not, as referenced in the auditor's findings every year, and the $800,000 increase makes up a significant part of every year's net school spending compliance? What if a factual conversation centered around active participants, like those here tonight, instead of Facebook friends bubbles? As Benjamin Franklin said, trickery and treason are the practice of fools who don't have it in them to tell the truth. What if those energetic and talented teachers, deans, paras, tutors, secretaries, and custodians who receive their pink slips and who were committed to a career in Leominster don't come back? What if the comprehensive DOR review had been requested by you, Mr. Mayor, in 2011 at the suggestion of former City Councilor David Rowlands after the Massachusetts Department of School Business Officers identified inefficiencies and waste in City Hall's working relationship with the school department, particularly in the areas of payroll and purchasing? Your city budgeting practice is the source of the problem, Mr. Mayor. I am asking you to request a thorough DOR review of the city's budgeting process, and I ask those here tonight to request the same, a DOR review from the mayor. This comprehensive review of budgeting procedures and finances is the only way to bring transparency and accountability to a flawed budgeting practice. Mr. Mayor, let's establish our citywide priorities. Education is an investment in the overall well-being of our city, and only a DOR review can prevent you from treating education like a temporary purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak at the public forum? Would anyone like to speak at the public forum? And one last time, would any, please step forward.
My name is Larry Giannakis, 148 Grant Street, and I work for the Technology Department. I don't have anything planned to say tonight. I just hope that you'll look at the budget, and everything that I've seen shows elimination of jobs. No one came to the Technology Department and asked how we could do our job more efficiently, how we could save money. There's things that we could do by migrating to Google, and I know that's a sore spot with the superintendent, but if we migrated to Google, we could save a lot of money and we can save jobs. But that wasn't addressed, we weren't asked, and it's not even being considered. And I think it's a travesty if you let people go when there's cost-saving measures that could save their jobs. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the committee? And for the final time, would anybody else like to address the committee? Okay, at this point, we're going to close that portion of the meeting. I'm going to read the Leominster School Committee statement. The committee represents the needs of all Leominster Public School students and places their interests above all others. We will exercise leadership, adhere to our protocols, and base our decisions upon a reasoned assessment of all available information. We will advocate for each of our schools and support high-quality public education in Leominster. At this time, we're going to move to Superintendent? Is there a report, communication?
Based upon the discussion and the deliberation at last night's meeting, we have come up with what the school business administrator and I have summarized as the Priority Plus budget, which is really the process that we were going through and what we had expected. So there was a priority budget that was ultimately presented last evening as option C. And after some really good discussion with school committee, they have made a few adjustments. And I'll ask Glenn Fado to come forward, just walk through the revised worksheet with you that you've received this evening, as well as address any other questions that the committee might have. So,
thank you, Superintendent. Again, we provided 50 copies of this. I hope that everyone has one or can look on. Priority Budget C presented last night called for total expenses net of city chargebacks and other sources of $69,914,000. That represents a 2.74% increase above net school spending requirement. Based on the discussion last night, the superintendent and I added the following items that we believe were discussed and reached consensus. Number one, add back the 5 dean positions that were proposed to be eliminated, 3 at the high school and 1 at each middle school, at a cost of $380,000. By doing that, we would eliminate the assistant principal position proposed for the high school, subtract $100,000. You add the cost of the health insurance for the 4 positions, the 5 deans minus the proposed assistant principal, that would be $42,300. Subtract the projected unemployment savings. These are the numbers that we, again, we're being straight with everything. We had anticipated paying out roughly 36% of everyone's earnings for approximately 65 to 70% of the employees whose positions may be eliminated. That savings would be $84,600. And, excuse me, and the $650,000 for sped positions requested by Ned Pratt for $650,000. Add the cost of health insurance for those 9 positions. It might be 10, it might be 8, but using 9 positions, that's $95,175. And based on last night's discussion, the superintendent met with his cabinet and came up with additional $50,000 by digging even deeper into instructional materials and services. So the total net charges based on those 7 recommendations is $932,875. Those numbers have been added into what's called Summary of Priority Plus Budget, and $930,000 was added for the salaries, and $2,875 was added to expenses, for a total requested budget, operating budget of $70,846,875, an increase of $2,899,028 above the net school spending requirement, which is a 4.04% proposed increase.
Thank you, Glenn. Comments from the committee or questions?
So I have a couple things that, one thing I know we hadn't discussed last night that we probably should talk about was the transportation balance that is left over for this year, which was approximately, Glenn, was it 700,000? 727,850.
That's projected. It might be a little bit more, might be a little bit left.
Okay. So I think that, like Sue mentioned last night, that's something that we should probably take care of before we start moving forward into talking about next year. So I would like to make a motion that the mayor make a request to the city council at their meeting on June 12th, or at least have it on their agenda, that he appropriate that money out of free cash so that we can take care of that before we get into our 2018.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion? Any thoughts, comments? Kristen?
So, Superintendent, if we did get that money, would we see a priority list soon after from you about what would be added back in? If we got the 727 from the city for that transportation?
This is for FY17.
This is for FY17.
But I thought were planning on paying that with 18 choice money. Isn't that, all right, so I guess that'd be the bigger question. Is that deficit is either piece or both pieces of the deficit reflective of the, in here, or we need to request that money separately?
No, I think based upon the process that we went through last night, if you remember at the top of the paperwork that we gave you last night, we have the required net school spending budget for FY18. We already subtracted the $2.1 million expected in school choice revenue, less the city chargebacks, which we estimated less than what is being charged to us this year, which is $6 million, plus the money for the crossing guards to arrive at what we had available for funding. So that was assuming that we would be using school choice funding for daily operations and not for the deficits.
So in order for us to So this budget, we'd need the city to pick up the $1.5 million of the deficit from 17 on top of this? Are we requesting both pieces from the city?
It was my understanding the $1.5 million was rolled into next year's budget, but the transportation was not.
Right.
Is that true, Glenn?
Excuse me. No, almost. This year, we're running a deficit of between 1.5 million and a little bit more, and it's for two items. One is the transportation deficit, and the other one is retiree health insurance. Not to be confused with employer retirement benefits that's in the chargeback. This is what we pay for our retired employees to be covered by either health insurance or Medicaid supplement. Last year, that expense, about $2.5 million, $1.3 million was covered by school choice. What's proposed yesterday was not including the transportation deficit, 'cause we decided that would be an obligation of the city, both next year and this year, but we're still carrying forward the deficit in retiree health insurance. And that's that $900,000 figure that's included in all the budget proposals. That's the amount of money above the net school spending requirement that was proposed last night.
Okay.
So the only request we need to make to cover our deficit this year would be for the transportation portion. The rest is rolled in here.
Yes.
So I guess at some point, if we don't get that money, we'd need to know how we pay for it. You know, what comes off. But I don't want to have that discussion tonight.
Any other comments or, okay, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And then I think we need to revote the transportation for next year again tonight.
Right, we
a
have
wrong
not
number.
actually voted on that, so that would be a separate vote.
Can I ask just one more question?
Sure.
So going back to what Glenn was talking about, and actually I think someone who spoke earlier talked about it too, was that our employee retirement contribution in fiscal year 11, it was $1.8 million, and in fiscal year 16, it's $2.6 million. That's a almost 45% increase over 5 years. This is, and I just have a question, this is the money that the city takes out of our chargebacks?
Yeah, indirect charges.
Indirect charges. So I know that this has kind of been a thing that we've talked about. In fact, I think I asked for it last year and we didn't get it. But I would like to make a motion that the mayor has the comptroller give us an explanation about how the city calculates these charges, because our chargebacks went up like 26%, but our employee contribution went up 45%. And I really would like to see what those numbers are, because that's a pretty large amount of money for us to not have any detail about what it is. So I'd like to make that motion that, and I'm pretty confident I made it last year too, but I'm going to make it again. I'd like to see how the city calculates the employee retirement contribution charges.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Just as a comment, I'm looking at a comparative budget for fiscal 13, 14, 15, 16. This has been running $875,000, $950,000, $1 million. So what are we running? What's our run rate this year? Because we're $900,000 deficit for retired health insurance. Is that the total?
There are two different issues. One is employee retirement contribution or employer
Right.
retirement contribution. That's related to the pension system.
Right.
That has nothing to do with retiree health insurance. That's part of the pension system. I don't want to go into the details, but the city's pension board makes a request of PRAC, an annual assessment, and then we are charged a portion of that annual assessment. And our portion of the assessment has gone up 45% in 5 years. and I don't think it's broken down by other city departments. Retired employees' health insurance is not an indirect charge, it's a direct charge. We got a quarterly bill from the city that includes all active employees and all retired employees. And the plan they're on, what we have to pay as the employer. It's running around 2.5 million this year, similar to last year. But again, you used $1.3 million of school choice last year to cover a large portion of those expenses. This year, it's not going to be as large, but we'll still not have enough money. Even if the city council does appropriate the $727,850 from free cash to cover this year's transportation deficit, you will still be running a deficit in retiree health insurance that we won't be able to pay by the end of the year. We just don't have the funds.
For the first number, Glenn, that we talked about, could that be because our retirees have increased? I'm just trying to figure out what is that number based on?
That's a good question. That's what we're trying to get the answer to.
Not the specifics, but I mean, these are for people who are retired, that are city employees.
Well, there's one sitting right there. Has your
Right,
pension gone up 45%?
No, non-teachers, I mean. There's city and non-teaching
Yeah,
city.
every employee of the city, even the school department, has to participate in a publicly funded pension system.
Right.
And most of the school employees are in the Massachusetts retirement system because they're licensed educators. All others participate in the local pension system.
So I know that Nona's pension has not gone up, I'm not saying that, but if we had,
8 years
if
it
we
hasn't
had
gone up.
more people who were retiring, that could account for
That
it.
could be the case, but I don't think the retirees have gone up 45% over the past 5 years. That may be the
No, it
case,
doesn't
but
seem
I
like we have that many.
doubt that very much.
So we did end up voting on a number for transportation last night, right? Because Sue, right, so
Yes.
we need to revote that number. Is there a rule about taking back our vote, or do I just?
We
Whoever
can
made the
change our
motion.
vote anytime we want.
Well, whoever made the motion, you can
They could rescind it.
rescind it.
No. Who
I
made
thought it
the-
was you.
I made the budget motion, not the transportation motion.
And we rescinded a lot of budgets.
Yeah, and I tabled this one for tonight.
No, just, we
I- I
voted
didn't
on
do
transportation, but I didn't make the motion.
No,
I
no
made
did.
the motion.
Okay.
And,
I don't know, Eileen's the person who would tell us what we need to do.
but I'm just
She
curious
wants
why
to know why.
we're rescinding it.
The numbers, this
It's
is
a
why we
little
need
different.
things in writing, so this is why we should have probably delayed the vote last night. We were $35,000 off, so we need to request $4,836,470. That's what the anticipated savings, as opposed to 35,000,
three,
whatever it was,
whatever.
with plus 35,000, 4,876, I think,
Okay, then I will.
just to be accurate.
I'll make a motion that we rescind the vote from last night for the transportation charges, as stated last night.
Or
Do we have a second? I guess, I don't know whether we necessarily need to rescind.
We
We can
amend
just
it?
vote and amend it and vote on a new amount.
So then
Can
I
we
would.
just amend the amount?
So to amend the amount, it's $4,836,470. And that's based off of the projected amount being $5,071,470. A commitment of $850,000 from Medicaid reimbursement. Our effort to reduce busing costs by $235,000. And that gives us a balance of the $3,986,470.
Do you want that to read that?
So that's the new motion to approve the $4,876,000.
36. 4,836, 470.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
reading from the wrong spot then.
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carries. Wendy, would you like to make a motion
Yes,
regarding
please.
the budget?
I would like to make a motion that we put forward a budget of 4.04% over net school of $70,846,875.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I think you should read them separately.
Yeah, I think we have to do
Expenses and
salaries.
salaries.
We
Oh,
do
I'm
have to
sorry.
do that, yeah.
Okay, which is made up of the a salaries line of $47,082,000 and the expenses of $23,764,875.
And we had a second by
Second.
Cody. Discussion? Any thoughts, anybody? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right, is there any other new business or old business that we need to discuss tonight, Superintendent?
No, there is not that I'm aware of.
Okay, does anybody in the committee have any old or new business? Cody?
You know, I know this has been an extremely emotional process for many of us, and I know that a lot of us are still really uncomfortable with what we voted on here tonight. I think this committee made its best attempt with give and take. You know, we tried to cut where we could. There's nowhere good to cut. And at the same time, you know, we are asking for help from the city. And that's ultimately what I'm going to ask you right now. We need your help. Go to the mayor, go to the city council, ask them to follow through on this vote that we just passed that is above net school spending. It's the only way that we're going to save jobs. We need your help. We need your activism. We need you to do what you're doing here tonight, but with the city. So please, please reach out to your local officials and get them to follow through on this number.
Wendy?
I want to echo Cody's call for activism. I want to say, speaking for myself, if I could have it, I would have loved to have saved every single position. And I hope people understand that being not okay with net school spending, that there had to be room for give and take. And while I would have liked to see more, I think that we have made our best effort to do the best we can with what we know we can get. And I would ask again that you ask the mayor to allow the city council to do the job they were elected to do and look at this as we passed it.
Nona?
I will echo that. I feel this is the best we can do with this time. I am still upset that we are outsourcing jobs. I disagree with that, but I think we have to, you know, get what we feel we can get, and hopefully we can get some more and bring more back.
Sue, I think, and then Heather.
As part of everyone's activism, I am going before the city council, and I hope all of you do, to request a reconsideration of the vote by the city council to spend $5 million on the field behind this school. I think this is a really difficult year financially, and I think they need to hear from you. I'm quite surprised during all these budget deliberations that not one person brought up the $5 million that's already been appropriated by the city to spend on fields. I really think that that's a source of money that we could use right now for education. So I would ask you to support that as well. Thank you.
Heather?
So just following up with everybody else, the budget the budget presentations that go before the Finance Committee for City Council, the school date is on June 20th. I did ask City Council, and they said that they don't have an open forum before the Finance Subcommittee meetings, but the final vote is going to be on June 26th in City Council chambers, and you can speak then. So if you can make it and you can go and support this budget, which hopefully will be presented, as Cody said, to the City Council intact, that is really where your voice can be heard. Again, it's on June 26th in City Council.
Through the chair, the budget public hearing for the school department is at 6:15 on Wednesday, the 21st.
Oh, 21st, sorry, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would, Ron, and then I'll go
All right,
last.
don't worry about it. I concur with everything that's been said. I'm not going to repeat everything everybody said. I agree. We need to hope that they will stay with this budget, and somehow we will get help from the community and from the city council. It is what it is. That's
I
it.
would like to, just point out the hard work that the Finance Subcommittee has done, the superintendent and Glenn, all the office school administrators. This was an arduous task and one that people did not take lightly. Hours and hours and hours of time have gone into doing the best that we can, knowing that we could not sustain what we wanted to sustain. There's not one person on this committee that wanted to see any cuts. We all wanted to see additions. But unfortunately, that was not a realistic, phase for the budget. We appreciate everyone who has come to speak. We've listened to what people have had to say, even if it doesn't seem like we've been able to honor everything that people have been able to talk to us about or email us about or call us about, speaking at all the public forums. I wish we had this many people at all of our school committees or budget processes. There's years where we have nobody show up. So this was a very difficult time for us. We appreciate everyone coming. And, again, I think it's the best budget that we can put forth. It's by no means a budget that we all feel good about, because we would rather see no cuts and actually more money coming into the school budget. But we do appreciate everyone, and just wanted to acknowledge the hard work that people have done. Thank you. Sue?
Did we formally vote on the transportation number? I know we voted to
Yes.
move it
Yes.
to the city council for payment, but did we actually vote on the total transportation? Because that's gotta be a
That was the
separate vote.
motion she just made.
Are
Okay,
you
wait.
talking about this
Okay,
year's?
two
Sue?
different things, right. We voted, last night, I believe we voted to move the transportation budget, request the
Request.
city council to pay for it. That's one thing.
That's right.
But we have to approve a transportation budget.
Which we just did,
We
I
just
thought,
did.
today.
just
We just did that.
Well,
Today.
No, I was
No.
correcting Nona's, not that your
Yeah,
number was
no, I
bad,
know.
but the bad number that we used last night.
No,
But but Sue's right, that was requested from the city. I don't think we've said this is our transportation number.
right, we have.
But it
we-
should be the same.
Right. That's what
Okay,
we
so we have
voted.
to vote it a
All right,
second.
so let's make another vote just to be on the safe side, but I guess I was thinking that the vote we just took now was to vote the transportation budget.
Well, it's a
So-
different number because the amount we're asking from the city council is net of the Medicare.
No.
No,
the way I
it's-
made the way the motion was made is for the whole amount. and I don't
For the
think
whole
we-
amount.
We care how they pay it, I'm
Right.
assuming
Okay.
we use the Medicaid.
Okay.
Right,
But
it
we-
should be for the whole amount.
Right, we have to make a motion.
All right, Sue, would you like to make that motion, please?
Not really.
Kristen?
So I'll make the motion, so I believe that the new number is $4,836,470 for transportation.
No, I
Second?
thought it's 5 million.
No, we're.
It's not the
reducing it by
5,071,000?
235. We're committing to reduce that number by 235.
Okay.
I think we have to.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that's up for discussion. Let's just make
So
We
the
should just change
projected,
this.
the projected transportation budget was $5,071,470, and we have made a commitment to reduce the transportation costs by $235,000, thus leaving us the amount that you cited, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Any other new or old business or comments? Do I have a,
I'm sorry, are we having another meeting after this, or no? Do we have to set up another meeting?
We have one on the books.
I think that until we know what the
regular
number we're
full
going to be
meeting, yes.
getting,
The
I don't
next-
know what we can do. I think that the administration knows that, they may be adding or
Yeah.
subtracting, and you
And
just
we
need
can
to be
move
ready to go for
line
that.
items.
The 19th.
from different accounts?
Yeah,
We-
and then
and-
I'd expect,
No, before that.
like
You'll find out.
a better,
City council. Right.
when would we input it in Munis? Soon
Right.
after
So-
that?
Yeah, we'll, as soon as we have numbers, we have the budget module prepared, ready to roll over, so that we'll be able to open up purchase
Okay.
orders after the
So
first of
then we could have the munis
July.
budget before
Yeah.
July, but
Yeah.
June 30th.
Yeah.
So I do want to just point out for the public is we have passed a budget and are requesting this amount of money. However, we do not know what the amount of money that will be presented to the city council. So if a budget less than what we have approved is presented, that means that we will need to make cuts at that point in time. So just for people to understand that, because we obviously can only operate with what we're given.
With regards to our transportation, if we don't get it funded at the, we have about a, $600 and something thousand deficit, I think.
Yeah, it's around
based on-
700,000, similar to this year.
I mean, yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Are we easily able to figure out who we need to transport? We have software that's ready to go to say, we have to do 1 through 6.
Yeah,
How many
we'll-
buses that
we'll-
means?
We're working with the consultants that are in right now for efficiencies,
Yep.
as well as suggestions for additional efficiencies that we hope that we can pick up by working with the community, and we'll continue to communicate that as we approach the summer. But if we need to look at additional avenues of reducing expense via or eliminating some transportation or whatever other means we have to do, then we'll be prepared to address that.
So I just want to make sure this committee realizes that if we don't get the money we've requested for 18, we're going to have to make significant decreases in whether it be stops or levels or, whatever, the one and a half. We do offer an excellent transportation plan right now for the people who live very close to schools. So we have to live within the means we're given, and we need to be ready to make those decisions during the summer.
That's correct.
If we don't get it.
And early on in the summer, because we need to be able to get routing squared
Yes,
away as
exactly.
early as possible this year, so the parents are aware of where bus stops are, what bus numbers will be picking kids up, et cetera, and we have to get that out earlier, so.
So if it,
Wendy is next.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to confirm, because we were talking about more meetings, that we still have a meeting on the books for the 19th.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a regularly scheduled
Right.
meeting.
I'm just
Yeah.
making sure that hasn't changed.
Heather?
One of the things that we discussed with the transportation consultant, which we wanted to avoid because of what happened this past year, but the cost of, the rider user fee on the bus. That is another option. It's not a popular option, but I think a lot of people seeing the process that we've had to go through to get to where we are right now can understand if this doesn't get fully funded by the mayor's office, that we may have to resort to that. So we also have that option with the consultants, and I've had conversations with them, Kristen has had conversations with them, so we have an idea of how we would need to move forward with that, and of course, we would let people know, obviously, as soon as possible, so.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second? Second. All those in favor? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.